Namaste. Welcome to UGC E-Pathshala for Postgraduate Studies. I am Anita Khanna and I teach Japanese in Jawaharlal Nehru University. And today we are going to study paper 15. The title of paper 15 is An Introduction to Japanese Literature in English. And the title of today's module is Sugawara no Michizane, the God of Scholarship in Japan. The objective. The objective of this module is to understand the importance of learning and scholarship in the Heian period, which gives us deep insights into the relation between politics and academics, scholarship, and through the ups and downs in the life and career of a statesman and scholar like Sugawara no Michizane. He was a commoner, but could rise to the top in spite of adversities. Yet, towards the end of his career, he faced adversities and died in exile as a Tatari kami, or the cursed spirit, full of vengeance. In order to understand the fate of Sugawara no Michizane, it is important to understand the keyword associated with him, which is Tatarigami. Tatarigami is a curse god or curse spirit, which usually is associated with a powerful spirit which bring death and destruction, fire and epidemic, plague and drought, warfare, or various other forms of calamity in order to take revenge from the human beings. In Japan, there are some of the most powerful spirits that haunt and that are haunted and have done much to shape the culture and politics of the country in its long history. In Japanese mythology, there is the famous Tatarigami, that is Yamata no Orochi, the eight-headed serpent that is killed by the Susanoo no Omikoto, the wind god. Another key word associated with such Tatarigami is Onryo. So, the curse gods or spirits, among these, the famous ones are the historical figures of Mononobe no Moriya, then Emperor Stoku, Sugawara no Michizane, Taira no Masakada, etc. These were the men of ancient age who died in anguish and transformed into Onryo. And here comes the important point, that in order to appease these vengeful spirits, shrines, especially Shinto shrines honoring them, have been built across Japan, and through the proper appeasement, their curses can be lifted or at least abated. An example of such appeasement is the festival of Gion Matsuri in Kyoto, which is one of the most famous festivals in Japan. This is an example of a ceremony initially designed to appease Tatarigami. It was during the Heian period when Kyoto suffered a number of outbreaks which were thought to be caused by the spirits of Susanoo and Gozu Tenno, an emperor. These were two powerful gods of disease and destruction. Now, in order to appease their wrath, a festival was organized in their honor at the Yasaka Shrine in Gion area of Kyoto. To keep the city free from these calamities, the festivals repeated every year. Eventually, this connection to Susanoo and Emperor Gozu was lost, but the Gion festival of Kyoto remains to this day the most famous traditional festival. Like this, the appeasement of Tatarigami, or the angry spirits, or Kajikito, etc., remained an important part of the religious life throughout the Heian period and thereafter. The duty of pacifying these cursed spirits fell to the onmyoji, who practiced onmyodo, the way of yin and yang, or sorcery. The historical figure of Sugawara no Michizane, who was a powerful statesman as well as a scholar of Chinese literature, when he fell out of favor with the emperor due to the conceited political moves by his opponents, the Fujiwara family, he was posted to remote Dazaifu, where he died in exile. After his death, he returned from the grave as a wrathful spirit to wreak his vengeance upon the opponents who had wronged him in the capital. There are several legends and stories about it. It's a known fact that after his death, a series of natural calamities and disasters ravaged the capital. Moreover, there were droughts and outbreak of plague and other epidemics, and Michizane's opponent Fujiwara no Tokihira died at the age of 39, an untimely death. The sons of Emperor Daigo became sick and died one after another. A lightning bolt struck the Seiryō, then the palace in Kyoto, causing a fire which killed a number of officials who had participated in the plot against Michizane. Not only that, a few months later, the Emperor Daigo himself became sick and died. Everyone in the capital had become convinced that these were the doings of Michizane's ghost that had become a thunder god and was punishing all those who had wronged him. Eventually, Emperor built a shrine to his spirit, posthumously restored his rank and office. Even the sorcerers were consulted and their advice was implemented, but it was of no avail as the disaster and calamities continued. Ultimately, in the year 987 AD, during the reign of Emperor Ichijo, Sugawara no Michizane was promoted to the highest rank posthumously, and he was deified as a kami or a god. A special shrine was built for him in northern Kyoto, and a festival was established in his honor. Michizane came to be known as Temman Tenjin, the god of scholarship, and thereafter the curse appeased. being regarded as one of the Sandai Onryo of Japan, or the three great Onryo. Let's have a look at the life and political career as well as scholarship of Michizane, who finally came to be worshipped as the god of learning. Needless to say, even now, the imperial family of Japan, as well as commoners alike, visit the shrine of Temman Tenjin to worship the god learning and scholarship in the Kitano Temmangu shrine. This was the first shrine in Japanese history where an actual person was enshrined as a deity. However, Michizane's exemplary ability and sincerity led to the dissemination of the Tenjin faith throughout Japan, and there are as many as 12,000 shrines that are dedicated to him. But the Kitano Temmangu shrine, the original one, is the most famous, and even to this day many students who wish to pass in the entrance examinations and other examinations, and other people who wish for the improvement of their abilities come here to visit and at times purchase the lucky charms for clearing the exams or to improve their abilities and skills. Introduction. Sugawara no Michizane. Sugawara family was a known family of scholars, and Michizane's father was a professor of Chinese poetry and history, while his grandfather had received the degree of Doctor of Letters in Japanese Monjo Hakase. That was the most prestigious title accorded to any scholar of the time. Coming from such a family, Michizane was talented from his childhood and could compose poetry in Chinese. At the age of 33, he became a university professor, the post which was held by his father. He enjoyed the favors of Emperor Uda, who appreciated Sugawara's poetic ingenuity and trusted him fully. Being in his good books, he was made head of the office in charge of the palace affairs and was promoted to the highest rank of Udaijin. In 894, he was selected to head a mission to be the ambassador of Kentoshi that were sent to China, but he submitted a memorandum stating that due to the deteriorating internal conditions of China, the mission of Kentoshi should be abandoned. His appeal was accepted, and the long-drawn practice of sending such delegations to China was discontinued on his single advice. Such was the influence and authority that Sugawara no Michizane enjoyed with personal rapport with the emperor. He was promoted to the top position at the age of 57, which was unprecedented for a scholar or a non-aristocratic person. Yet his height of success was short-lived, as it was the time when it was difficult for anyone to rise in power circles without the support of Fujiwara family. Sugawara no Michizane was not a noble, and coming from a common background, his growing success invited the enmity of Fujiwara family, and he was implicated in a plot. As a result, he was demoted to the position of the Zainagon no Sotsu, the governor of Kyushu, which virtually meant banishment. Upon the insistence of the ex-emperor Uda, he was later absolved of the charges but did not live to see it. The disgraced and heartbroken Michizane died in Kyushu itself in the year 903. Living in an environment of scholarship and academics, Michizane was a talented person and grew up to be a scholar of high caliber of Chinese history and politics. Also, his interest in poetry made him a poet of both Chinese and Japanese poetry. He was the editor of one of the 6 national histories of Japan, that is Ruiju Kokushi, and also contributed in another historical compilation of Sandai Jitsu Roku. His collections of Chinese poetries are highly appreciated for its poetic appeal, especially the 2 compilations named Kanke Bunso and Kanke Koso are specimen of his poetic talent. Kanke Bunso includes 550 of his poems, out of which the best ones are 100 poems, which are given a title, My Thoughts. The theme of these poems varies from a wide range of subjects, especially the ones written during his period of exile or demotion excel all other poems. It's a masterpiece of the Japanese mind seen through the Chinese poetry and is highly appraised till date. The solitary life for Michizane, who was born and brought up in Kyoto amidst the active political circles, was hard in the remote solitary province of Sanuki. Being in exile, he laments in his poems, the long days are difficult to pass. These long days he spent indulging in composing Chinese poetry or waka, and he wrote in The Idle Thoughts on a Winter Night, a collection of poetry. He remarks, so with 1,000 thoughts about my plight, I sit, while beyond the window the sky announces dawn approach. The poems of Kanke Koso are different from the typical subjects treated under the Chinese poetry or kanshi and deal with such themes as robberies, court feuds, political affairs, traders, that were seldom treated to be the subjects of poetry. Especially his autobiographical poems that ponder over the meaning of life surface for the first time in Japanese poetry. In the final analysis, one can say that Sugawara no Michizane's works show that he was a fine scholar and poet of both Chinese and Japanese poetry, as well as a towering statesman. In his career, he had attained grand heights, whereby, on his single advice, the embassies to China were discontinued. This was a landmark development in the history of Japanese literature, as this decision facilitated the growth of true Japanese literature that eventually replaced the dependence on Chinese models.